Yeah, I guess I should have the microphone. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Corvallis School District Budget Committee to order. It is 6:35 p.m. on Thursday, May 30th, 2024. We are missing one member, but she is en route, so she will be here shortly. I think we're going to start off with the follow-up from the last meeting from the budget officer.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. So you will see in your packet that I just printed out the first page with the most recent question and answers on our running document that I've been sending out. The full thing will be posted online, but I didn't want to print out all those pages. So these were the four takeaway questions that we had from the last meeting. They don't necessarily go in a logical order, so I'm just going to go through them one by one. The first question that we received was what electives were reduced at the high school beyond music. Specifically, were any CTE courses reduced? There was a reduction in computer science, which is a CTE course, fine arts, health, and filmmaking, which is also a CTE course. There were reductions made in math and language arts due to overstaffing in those areas. So more FTE than was needed to fill the course requirements for the number of students. The next question, similar, what courses require students to travel between high schools? So this was the question with the buses going back and forth, and what does that look like? So there's quite a long list here, but I will read them off just so that people at home have that information. French is offered at both schools, but students travel depending on which level of French they're taking. German is the same. Culinary arts, which is a CTE course, health occupations, which is a CTE course, AP stats, AP Spanish, AP physics, Arabic, AP pre-calculus, calculus BC, music, ethnic studies, AP chemistry. And that one is a little unique, as in students can travel if it accommodates their schedule better to get in other electives that they want. And theater and computer science, which is also a CTE course. Okay, switching gears quite a bit to some more technical questions. So I want to preface this, Sammy, I know this was your question, and I just want to preface that this is a very loose estimate based on if everything was exactly the same as it currently is across the state. But you had asked what would the biennial state school fund allocation needed to have been to adequately address our budgetary needs. So taking into consideration if our enrollment declined as projected and all the other factors stayed the same, we would have needed an $11 billion state school fund allocation, and we are at 10.2. And then the last question that we had on our list to come back with is just the list of districts that were used in the comparison of the reserve balance. So those are listed there. We have Greater Albany, Lake Oswego, Lebanon, Lincoln County, McMinnville, Oregon City, Portland Public, Redmond, Salem, Sherwood, and Westland, Wilsonville. So all of those, with the exception of Portland Public and Salem, are the districts that we use when we are doing comparables for salaries and benefits. So, and I included Portland Public and Salem, since those are two of the districts that largely get kind of thrown out there as comparison districts. So those numbers were in there, and they were not outliers. So when I removed them, nothing really happened to that average, so I kept them in there. That is all. As far as information, I don't have anything formal prepared for you tonight. This is just an opportunity to ask any additional questions that you have of us. So we'll continue with the agenda, and there will be opportunity for questions after we go through.
I have a question about the answers to the questions. Yeah. So with the classes that are offered that students travel back and forth for, are they roughly split so that it's not impacting students at one school more than another?
That is my understanding, but I don't have the specific breakdown of which one is at which. Sorry.
There's a degree of balance between the two.
Yeah.
Could I ask a follow-up question just related to that? You're talking about the two high schools here. Are there any where College Hill students are traveling in terms of accessing courses at high schools? And I'm thinking about how students at College Hill fulfill their language requirements, for instance, or others? Or is the travel primarily just between students at CV and CHS?
It's primarily between students at CV and CHS. Yep.
Okay, let's get through the next part and then we can keep asking questions. So was there anybody that signed up for public comment? Is there anybody in attendance who would like to comment? Okay. Hearing no comments, the public hearing is now closed. Okay, so now we can open it up for committee discussion, questions, and requests for more information from staff. I would request that any requests for information be kept pretty simple, that to the levels that staff would be able to answer tonight, since we have had an entire week to ask more detailed questions. So with that, Sammy.
Thank you, Chair, and in line with your recommendation, I'll attempt to ask my questions to Lauren, clarifying questions in a way that's probably it's going to be easy, yes or no. So you shared that in answering to the question, what would have the biennial state school fund allocation needed to be adequately addressing our budgetary needs, that a biennial allocation of approximately $11 billion or $800 million more than what was allocated for the biennium would have allowed us to maintain current service level in 2024-2025. We've been given 10.2. The education community asked for 10.3 billion for all school districts 197 ESDs, and we would not be where we are right now in this budget if they have actually, instead of 10.2, gave us $11 billion, correct?
I don't, is that working? Okay. That's correct. Through loose calculations, I think the biggest difference between what we had asked the legislature for didn't take into account maintaining ESSER funding. And so what I calculated would be to allow us to keep everything that we are currently funding with ESSER funds and adjust based on enrollment, and we wouldn't be cutting.
Thank you. Is this a good time for a comment or a statement? So, thank you, and I want to share a little bit of tough love with the community that we work with, the legislature, city, county, and the community that we're answering for. This is tough. I've been on the budget committee since 2015, late 2015, and I believe this is the hardest budget that we're going to have to approve or consider for approval since I joined the board. And I heard tough stories from the years before I joined. It is the hardest decision I think we will have to make right now because the soul of public education is taken away from it with every decision we make in the years to come. And I don't blame us. I don't blame the hard work of the superintendent and staff developing the best budget that they could offer. And that's my important comment here. This is the best budget that we can pass in the worst conditions that I could have imagined us facing in the past 10 years. And I want to really thank the hard work of the community sharing the priorities and the values, the superintendent and sharing where we can do our best to maintain the service level. But I don't know how I can say it bluntly. It is Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. We need an answer how we can move from here. And in the words of President Truman, the buck always stops here, and our hands are tied. We have to pass a balanced budget. With an allocation of $10.2 billion, this is what we're finding. I was coached when you advocate with the legislature, advocate hard, and when they give you an answer, say thank you very much and fight the fight next time. I broke that rule last time because we were asking for 10.3 and we were given 10.2. And someone in the legislative leadership told me, and I think this is the first time I say this publicly, I shared it with our friends during negotiations. When I said, thank you for the 10.2, and we need that extra $100 million that the education community is asking for. Otherwise, we're going to see strikes across the state. We're going to see cuts across the state. We're assuming the most conservative calculations. Give us an extra $100 million. And I was told, Sami, if you ask for more, you're greedy. We're going to call you greedy. And I want to say, what you're seeing here, if you call that greed, you don't understand what public education is offering for the community and the kids. We're actually fighting the good fight for our children and for the community. $11 billion is the bare minimum for this biennium. And we have structural problems that the state needs to address so we can move forward, protecting the sanity of public education and delivering on every need for our community. I put it on us and the pulpit of budget committee members, citizens, and board members that we need to fight the good fight and we need to be assertive. We're going to hold each other accountable. That the dollars that we're asking for are necessary. They're not additional luxury. It's going to be necessary. And I hate to say we have to wait until 2025, but we shouldn't. We can't do it alone. We have to have the PTAs and the parents and the leaders in the community lock in arms with us and say education is a priority, and the way that we formulate how we fund education is going to be necessary. So the QEM is not only a benchmark we aspire toward, it's the minimum that we need to achieve. And if that means Corvallis and Oregon should be open for business so we have more tax revenue, let's make sure we can balance the budgets with a way for our state to properly fund education. We can't undercut education every time. And to the city council, Mayday, 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 we need to make sure housing crisis is addressed in Corvallis. It is unique to Corvallis more than anywhere else. We're the highest rent burden in community. I am getting priced out of this community. Many of my peers are getting priced out of this community or deciding not to have kids in this community. And we need to decide at this moment, are we going to take urgent actions at the city level to make sure housing is affordable and attainable for the community that would love to live here and send their kids in our schools. And to the federal government to recognize that COVID officially is over. The impact of COVID is not over. The impact on our kids is generational, and the assistance that they gave us, we showed impact, we showed results. And we understand it's drying up and we have to make those really clear and transparent measures. But to the federal government, this is Mayday. They need to really address the systemic problems that we have in our schools, and that needs their support as well. So the buck stops here with us with advocacy. I'm supportive of this budget with really pained hearts that we need to do more, and more is going to happen when we sign off this meeting and start calling our elected official and holding each other accountable to make sure we have a better budget next year that addresses not only the deficits of next year, but also the deficit that we're experiencing now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Any other members of the board have any questions or discussion that they wish to open up? Go for it.
I just wanted to underscore everything Sammy just said, and like we hope that folk hear us and are asked to advocate with us, because I know we're planning on doing some advocacy in general beyond just this meeting. Like, this isn't just words, like this is a deep commitment to our community to be able to advocate. And but I did also, or not, but, and so thank you, Sammy, for saying everything right now, so I didn't have to all re-say it again to you. So underscore what Sammy said. And I also wanted to apologize to the budget committee in general. I feel like we went off track at our last meeting and kept our budget committee here a little bit later than we probably should have, talking about board matters. And so I just wanted to put that out there. I feel like some of our conversation kind of was veering towards things that we should have been having a conversation at a board meeting on. That's outside of you all's purview as far as like policy changes and those kind of conversations. So just wanted to say that for the committee. I have a lot of thoughts too coming into the meeting, and just the reality of where we're at for public education with the disinvestment. And so listening to Sammy talk right now and thinking about like the dollar amount that's presented to the community, I really urge us all in here and beyond this room to pay attention with the percentage of the budget that is the next time we're advocating, because it looks like a good deal. It looked like it was great for us and we're getting all this money, but the percentage of the budget is like way less than what it should be. And I think that's really deceiving to community members and to folk that are like looking at the numbers without looking at the total impact on the overall budget from a percentage standpoint. And so I hope that we can look at that a little bit more closely next time, because that was really frustrating seeing how much it has dropped over the last 4 bienniums, which is the time period you're talking about too, of watching it just continue to get chipped away at. I did have the same question that Sean already asked about College Hill, but that was mostly all I wanted to say. Oh wait, no, the other one, for the CTE options that are impacted, the electives reduced at high school beyond music, that question, do they still have a good number of CTE courses? Just so folks in the community know.
Yeah, we still have a strong array of CTE courses, and the examples that were given, some of those were not completely reduced, just a portion of the FTE, so the number of courses offered during the day for those classes. So that's another piece of that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I didn't want it to seem like there is no more computer science if there is some level of computer science, and the same with like fine arts and health and filmmaking and that, and music, since we already heard that there is music still.
And computer science is a good example because it's also in the next question, because it's offered at CHS, and so students from CV can come and take it, and so it's still available. There's just less class opportunities for that.
Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to make a comment based on the language around advocacy and the desire to help and participate in that. One of the things that is striking to me is that when budgets happen in the spring, and our advocacy needs to happen next winter. So in January is when our advocacy really needs to happen, when the legislature comes back into Salem. And so I'm hoping that we can continue to count on folks. I know that I can count on you all, but that as the community thinks about the needs, January is that time. I received an email from a student who presented recently at one of our meetings asking about how to participate, and I said, I want you to hold on until January. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have those conversations, but that's when the real lift happens. And so walking out of this meeting tonight, I just want folks to know that there's, this is work that's going to need to happen over the next 6 to 8 months. Actually longer than that, because it won't get adopted till next June. So over the next year.
Yeah, I'd pretty much like to reiterate that. We all see the posts on Facebook about, oh, the school board's doing this, the school board's doing that, we're in the budget. April and May is not the time to be having that conversation as a community. Winter, when the legislature is in session, is the time. And I would like to take a moment to address our next state representative, whichever one of you it ends up being. Remember today, when you are in Salem, you are going to be probably our biggest ally in making sure that schools are funded, that the state is doing everything it can to make it easier for cities to solve the housing crisis, because those are the two biggest issues. So whichever one of you it ends up being, remember today, remember what we need. Are there any other questions, comments? Yes. Assuming your microphone will work.
So I also want to make sure that the community pays attention to how we have a big issue with how we're funding schools, but what the pieces of how we fund schools are. Because we have the general fund, and then we have grants. And as we've added more grants that restrict how that money can be spent, our general fund has been going down as a percentage of the state budget. And the problem with that is those grants, although it may look like on a graph, those are making up some of those cuts to the general fund. Those funds can't be used to pay for librarians when we need librarians. They're being used to pay for the things that are specific to that grant. So when you are looking at advocating for school funding, pay attention to the buckets that school funding is going into so that we have the money we need to spend to support the broad range of programs we have and not just specific programs that are great and needed, but those grants create more fund writing, which are report writing, which creates administrative work, and it limits the flexibility in our district of how we use the money we have.
Of course.
I want to just really appreciate and hope that we continue to apply for grants, as knowing one of the ones that we just received that's going to provide critical services. So I just want to make sure that we don't discourage grant writing from district staff too, because that's really important that that happens. And the advocacy that I'm talking about, just so it's clear to the community and the rest of the budget committee, is the state funding budget, and that's the one I've been talking about pretty much most of the year, like since, well, at least since January-ish, that we need to start advocating and just trying to find the resources, and I'm glad that there's something coming together at the state level for that, but that's the kind of advocacy I'm talking about, and I am supportive of continuing the grants too, because those are all necessary together, because they do create those buckets you're talking about, and they don't compete with the state funding. It's not looked at for the state allocation.
The grants I'm talking about are the ones that have been added that are large state funding grants, not the grants like we just applied for that resulted in our ability to serve our Native American students. But things like the Student Success Act and the Literacy Act, which all do important things. But as we fund schools more and more by those large grant programs, we take away the flexibility of school districts to use the money in a way that's needed by the district.
I do, with the disclosure, debates are over, so the conversation is going to be building on each other and help supporting each other. What I'm hoping is we have collective commitment that the $11 billion is the general fund, and we're going to protect the Student Success Act from being backfilled by the general fund. A talking point that we heard in the past biennium, that the $10.2 billion is historic. And it is historic, but if you count for inflation, it is a cut. It is a cut. If you count for current service level, it is a cut. So possibly, in addition to the $11 billion, we need to account for the other grants, the Student Success Act, and other grants that are there, and ensure our commitment, collective commitment, that the Student Success Act will be protected and will not be used to backfill the general fund. So just want to build that constructive, clarifying comments that we should be agreeing on, if that's okay.
Cool. All right. Any other questions, comments, discussions? Shauna? Oh, Disha.
Being the first year on this budget committee, I would just really like to commend the board and the district staff for putting it together. as has already been said, we're between a rock and a hard place. We have to cut the money, and I think that you have done a brilliant job in figuring out where we would have minimal impact and still offer maximum benefit to the students. And I guess the other thing I would like to say is this conversation is happening across the state because, as you have all said, birth rates are dropping, enrollment is dropping, and with so much state support based on per student, it misses the big picture of what a student needs in education. It really just turns it down into a mathematical equation, which is not what we need. And we need a whole lot of fixing for that. But thank you for all the work that's gone into this, and the community for all the support and all the comments and feedback.
Thank you. I want to echo that gratitude, Tisha, that came across in your comment to the district, to leadership as well as staff across the district for the deep care and thoughtfulness in, Ryan, you shared some words last time we met in saying just very authentically, it stinks. And it's hard work, and it's hard work especially knowing that jobs are being cut, that resources and supports for students and classes are being lost, in additional support in classrooms is being lost, and we all know that public education is an amazing thing and can be an amazing thing. And this is a hard time where there are too few resources to do the amazing work we know needs to be done. And we are all here because we believe deeply in public education. Many of us are products of public education, some of us through this district, many of us have children in this district, and we all believe in the power of education in this community. So I just want to also extend my gratitude to the board, to the budget committee, to everyone here, the community for coming forward, sharing their comments, and as well as that critical importance of advocacy for more funds, it's critical. It's absolutely critical. There's also work proactively to be continued here, today, every day in that work, and I know that so much thoughtful work was done over this year to get to this point, a budget that is so clear, that is transparent, that really tried, as you were saying, to maximize the benefit to students, minimize the harm. No budget is perfect. There are things that are cut that nobody wanted cut. And thinking about what are lessons learned from this past year that can be applied moving forward into the next year. So with all of our hope that funding would be increased, if it is not, or if it's not at the level that's absolutely needed, not only for continuing services, but for growth, how is the community being involved proactively to be part of making those decisions together? What is it in public education that we really have to preserve that makes Corvallis that special and amazing place to continue raising children and youth and teens and supporting the educators and staff who support them? Something that one of the examples that I brought up in another meeting was I heard this great example when curriculum support staff came in and talked about decisions around the science curricula. That they said, we brought together science educators, we had a shared vision for science at this level in the district, and then made choices about what are the nice to haves, the needs to have, and made those decisions about what to adopt versus what to cut. Something I've heard from other groups is that that's not yet in place for some of the aspects of work in the district. Specifically, I've heard from a couple of music teachers, for instance, as well as in other programs of, could we come together for a shared vision of what our programming means at the district level? What does this look like? What is it that we value so that when the next round of cuts comes, or hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, that those voices have already been taken into account in some way and feel heard in that process to every degree possible. So that was something that really stood out to me in asks from the community of what are the ways that we bring some of those voices in proactively. And I think this year with the new board goals, knowing that those goals are now set, but that the activities that fall under them are still being developed, this could be a really important time for voices across different programs, different levels of the district to come together in shared visions around CTE, around library support, around music, theater, the arts, and all other programs represented, to think about what does that look like in terms of those activities, and how are those priorities set, which ultimately helps make those decisions moving forward too, both in terms of where do hopefully boosted resources get put, and how do we prioritize that, and if we have the need for more cuts, those voices are are held there too. So, and I know that this district is very thoughtful and listens deeply and really learns and grows as we all go. So looking forward to supporting that any way we can.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Okay. At this time, I might be willing to entertain some motions to get us going. Sammy?
Chair, I move that the Corvallis School District budget for 2024-25 in the aggregate amount of $176,657,022 for all funds be approved.
Second.
Okay, so who do we have as the second? Bill? Jim? Okay, so we have a duly made and seconded motion. At this point, I'll invite the secretary to call the roll.
Aye.
Were we done with discussion? Don't we usually have discussion before we vote? I just didn't hear a call for any further discussion.
Yeah, if you have any discussion you wish to make.
No, it was just a point of order. Aye.
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 Now, math was never my strong suit, but I'm pretty sure the ayes have it by unanimous. All right, now we have a budget. Now how are we going to pay for it? Got another motion to make.
I'd like to move that the permanent tax of $4.4614 per thousand of assessed value be levied for operating purposes, that a local tax rate of 1.5 per 1,000 of assessed value be levied in support of the general fund, and that a tax amount of $16,279,585 be levied for the service of bonded debt obligations.
Do we have a second? Second. All right, have a duly made and seconded motion. Is there any discussion? All right, then let's do this again. Let's call the roll.
Aye.
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 All right, once again, the motion carries unanimously. All right. At this point, I would like to move us to, make sure I'm following my, all right, some consolidated actions and ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes for the meetings of May 25th, 2023, April 25th, 2024, and May 23rd of 2024. Oh, yeah. Uh-oh.
Yes. So, just for the record, I will change the call to order on 5/23/24, so our last meeting, where Judah apparently shows up twice. So, I will list him as absent and not present. If
Okay.
everyone is okay with
Are there any objections to the change? Nope, okay.
Okay.
Then, hearing no objections, those minutes have been adopted as amended. Which brings us to our last thing. But before we get to actually getting out of here, I wish to also express my sincere thanks to staff. I've been at this for a few years, been in a couple budget committees, and I've had my fair share of creating some budgets, and it is not easy work. And it is certainly made harder when you are not given the resources that you need to keep everybody happy and to properly do your jobs. So thank you very much, staff, for all of your hard work, for giving us a budget that has been said is the best that could be expected in pretty stinky circumstances. So, and now that we're done, you got to start doing it all again for next year. The work never stops. I also want to take a moment to thank citizen member Bill Doherty, who's been at this for 6 years and whose term expires, and Penny York. After her 3rd year, her term is expiring unless she chooses to come back again. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. At this point, that means we will have, count 'em, not 1, not 2, but 3 vacancies for citizen positions next year. Anybody who is interested. We will begin recruiting for that in the fall. So with that said, unless there's any objection. Oh, yeah, Lou, go for it.
I just wanted to make a comment again to the community that we know this is really hard and that we appreciate hearing from you. And it just really bums me out that we expect so much from the community with taxes and things like that to fill a gap in public education. Public education is promised by our state government, and it doesn't feel like it's being supported in the ways it should be. And so I also wanted to thank the community that is doing that part too, because that we didn't really talk about the tax rate and levy either, but that's also helping fund education. And I don't think that I felt good leaving without saying thank you to the community for helping step up in that way too. And I really wish that we had a lot of money to pull together in other ways to help out. But thanks to Ryan and your whole team for all your work. But that was all. I just wanted to make sure we didn't just gloss over that community contribution. Sure. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, we're adjourned. See you next year.